Hi, good evening, everyone. I am Tamara L, and welcome to another installation of Just Another Messenger, where we raise the situational urgency and consciousness regarding today's current events. Now, each episode of Just Another Messenger will continue to dive deep into the historical past by examining the philosophies, legal systems, and political decisions that continues to influence our daily lives. Now, over the past 20 plus years, Dr. Umar Johnson has been one of the most polarizing figures in the Black consciousness. But one thing remains clear: he's built a social, physical, and mental following by challenging mainstream narratives about education, Black economics, Black family units, snow bunnies never, baby, and Black community empowerment. Now, suddenly, there's this deadbeat daddy narrative that appears out of nowhere by his now 22-year-old daughter, targeting him just as he's making strides in his work. I mean, he's doing great work. Now, let's be clear: Just Another Messenger is not here to point fingers, a victim or victor blame in this situation. Because let's be clear, this is a lose-lose battle in these social media streets, and I'm going to show you why. And it's none of our business, but this is another take on it. Now, if you know how smear campaigns work, this should have set off all kinds of alarm bells. Let's just break this down, the numbers between the bigger picture of how smear tactics are used against the Black community. Now, before we get started, don't forget to hit the subscribe, share, and like button over on YouTube to be a part of the conversation that matters. You wouldn't want to miss this. All right. We're back and people are coming into the building. Now, let's get this smear campaign against Dr. Umar Johnson. Let's get this up under our belt, also known as the Prince of Pan-Africanism. Now, all these allegations are flying, the narratives are being spun, and the real question we must ask ourselves is, who benefits from this? Who benefits from this smear campaign? And who will be harmed by this? It could be an individual harm or it could be a community harm. Now, most recently, the Black community, they had a huge brain explosion and was able to interpret the signs and symbols of Kendrick Lamar's halftime show, Not Like Us. Oh, I mean, they were able to just eloquently see these signs and symbols to a T. But now to hear a smear campaign in the making, as I said before, the signs and symbols are for the unconscious mind. That's what it's designed for. All of a sudden, you can't hear that. But let's do this. Let's go ahead and say hello to our guest that is here. Yes, Monday night service. Yes, that's right. We are having Monday night service tonight. Our regular scheduled program is on Wednesday at 8 p.m. So yes, and we have Sister Doretha, yes, Islam, and we're also streaming over on my personal Facebook page, Tamara L. All right, so let's look at that. We're gonna have some housekeeping that's going on right here. We're gonna put up our overlay. Let's just go ahead and put up our overlay here, and we're going to continue to have that up just briefly to show that you can go continue to subscribe, share, and like over on our YouTube page at Just Another Messenger, and follow us on X at jam_404 podcast. And please continue to support our channel via Cash App at $ Just Another Messenger. And please, if you're looking to be a part of the show, I know someone who like to be a part of the show, send us a friendly email to justanothermessengerpodcast@gmail.com. So we'll have that information up shortly. But let's do this. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get this thing started, and I'm going to come offline. And so we could just go ahead and break this information down, this smear campaign, Nobody Saw Coming with Dr. Umar. And I'm going to put this up right here. I'm going to put this sign up. So let's start with some historical truths about the area known as Wilmington, Delaware, so we can tie in the psychological framework surrounding the systematic issue regarding the deadbeat dad topic that's lighting up the airway over the past couple of days. Now, I put this sign up because this is the first sign that you see when you're exiting off exit 95 north onto Delaware Avenue into Wilmington, Delaware. Now, how do you know this, Tamara? Well, I know this because I lived in the area for 10 years, which is why I'm touching on this topic, because at Just Another Messenger, it's about solution, and we're not about gossip, wine, liquor, comedy, nor pseudo love matching satire. So in 2019, I was a part of a Morris civic organization that held civic classes just one street over on Vanderveer Avenue. Now, we were looking at purchasing a building that Dr. Umar purchased when he purchased it. So a lot of people say, oh, Dr. Umar started this in 2010. He may started his fund campaign for his educational movement, but he did not purchase this building that until around 2019. I know that for a fact because we were looking at the building as well. Now, when he's purchased this building, before that, it was a black charter school which had closed down, but we were so excited. And I know I was excited when I heard it was purchased by Dr. Umar Johnson. Now, one thing I do understand is that the task and struggle it takes once you enters the lion den of education is a huge undertaking. But however, let me give you some background story about Wilmington, Delaware. Now, in the 1968 riot in Wilmington, Delaware, it was part of a broader wave of civil unrest that swept the United States following the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Then this occurred on April the 4th, 1968, and the riot occurred on April the 9th. Like many other cities across the country, Wilmington experienced protests, demonstration, violent clashes as Black community expressed outrage over systematic racism, economic despair, and social justice. And let's see what that looked like there.
Look at this picture. Imagine if this was a scene when you went outside your house. You're on the way to the store, or going to hang out with friends, or going to school, or going to work. As you're walking, you constantly pass soldiers in uniform with their weapons, and they're patrolling the streets, and they're maintaining order, and they have the authority to impose a curfew or restrict your freedom. This is called martial law. And so this was the case in Wilmington, Delaware, throughout most of 1968. The people lived with the National Guard patrolling the streets for most of that year. Now, the death of Martin Luther King Jr. sparked riots across the United States. As a matter of fact, over 100 cities were touched by some sort of riot or violence as a result of Dr. King's death. Now, within the Black community, there's going to be a lot of anger and frustration as a result of Dr. King's death, and there are many documented instances of Black people destroying property, looting stores, and sadly, there was loss of life. Both white and Black people lost their lives during these riots. In New York,
All right, keep in mind there that we're dealing with signs and symbols for the conscious mind. And as we continue to connect the dots of forced involuntary servitude, martial law on American soil in Black communities, and deep racial tension that the American people suffers from severe trauma. And let's look at one of them. But let's do this. Let's We have to do our caption because the views, opinions, and thoughts are the protective expression of Tamara L for storytelling and educational purposes and does not provide statutory counseling for any United States color of law jurisdiction or proceedings, because we're going to get into a lot of codified the racism that is codified. And this is definitely dealing with the deadbeat dad syndrome that's taking place here with Dr. Umar. Let's look at that. Let's look at one of the areas in which the American people suffers, and this is called psychoneurosis. Let's just look at psychoneurosis. Now, the term psychoneurosis refers to the development of psychological distress or the neurotic symptoms in response to chronic stress and unresolved internal conflicts. Now, in the context of the Black community, decades of racial, systemic racism, economic disenfranchisement, and cultural marginalism has contributed to collective stress that can manifest as psychoneurotic symptoms. Now, this historical and ongoing stress feeds into stereotypes like the deadbeat dad syndrome, a narrative that unfairly portrays Black fathers as absent and irresponsible. Now, let's look at this label. Many Black fathers experience chronic stress and anxiety due to the overwhelming stigma placed on them by society. And psychoneurosis in this context is manifested through guilt and self-doubt, emotional detachment as a coping mechanism, as well as PTSD from family court and child support system. Now, the deadbeat dad syndrome is not just a personal failing, nor just about the present. It's about the result of historical wounds and institutional attacks that's passed down through generation, such as historical fatherlessness and slavery, post-traumatic slave syndrome, social reinforcement of negative stereotypes. Now, this Black deadbeat dad narrative is making it harder for Black fathers to feel valued and respected. Now, to dismantle this deadbeat syndrome and the psychoneurosis attached to it, the Black community. Now, these are racial identity. So I'm using this in a colloquial sense to reach the masses. The Black community must actively challenge these false narratives and provide psychological, economic, and social support to Black fathers. We must also highlight positive Black fatherhood stories to counteract the dominant negative narrative, eliminate child support laws that disproportionately target Black men, and advocate for child rights so Black fathers are not pushed out of their children's lives. Now, this deadbeat dad syndrome is not just a stereotype, people. It is a psychological weapon used to dismantle Black families and to create generational dysfunction. The psychoneurosis keeps Black men feeling helpless, unworthy, and detached from their own children. Now, the real enemy is not the Black father. This must be understood. I'm going to say this again. The real enemy is not the Black father. It's the system that has manufactured this cycle. Now, let's look at the manufacturing that's take place. Let's look at the top 3 campaigns in which Dr. Umar has been struggling with over the from, I would say, for the past 10, 15 years that I know of. Look at this. He's called now the new one is the deadbeat daddy, this deadbeat daddy syndrome that's going on. And then he had the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey school scammer. Oh, he's not building the school fast enough. He's scamming the money from the people. People, if you only knew, and the sad part about this is there's no grace given. And really, honestly, if we want to point the finger at anyone regarding the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey school not being built fast enough, we need to take that finger and point it towards ourselves, because this is a school that Dr. Umar Johnson is building through the funding from the people for the people. He's not utilizing method of getting investment from the YT people to build this because he don't want that type of control. So if he raised over $1 million during that campaign and he purchased that building, I know for a fact there were back taxes that was had to take care of that reached over 100,000. The purchase of the school was like $400,000. And in the studies of myself looking at when we were looking to purchase the school, and when the previous school had left that building, there was a lot of mold and issues and underwater table issues that were going on with that building. But as a visionary, Dr. Umar felt that he can undertake this challenge. And you have to talk about, this is not just a physical building challenge. This is also a challenge in the physical mind of the people of that area in Wilmington, Delaware. So a lot of times, the messenger is being killed for the vision for the future by its own people. Now, another campaign, the Snow Bunnies Never. Dr. Umar has been a stark advocate for the unification of the Black family, and that is through the Black man to stop procreating and uniting with the YT race through marriage, because he explains how the marriage is an economic contract. Now, these are one of the things that he talks about. Now, let's look at this. Let's look how this Wrap-Up Smear campaign operates. This Wrap-Up Smear campaign is start off with everything's going into the funnel. It's going into the objective, the content, and all the various platforms, where it's mainstream media or social media. Everything is funneled into this smear campaign. And what happens, it creates a false narrative first. So, which means a political group or an individual fabricates a false story or a misleading claim about a target, often an opponent. And then it goes into what Nancy Pelosi is going to show you. It goes into what you call merchandising, media application, where the false narrative is pushed to friendly media outlets. How friendly could they be if they're creating this weapon? All right. And it appears to have some type of legitimacy, because you see it on CNN, you see it on ABC, you see it on this person, TikTok, you see it on Facebook, you see it on YouTube, you see it there. So once it's reported, it gains this life of its own in this mainstream credibility, despite its origin, because no one ever sat down with the mother of that 22-year-old. No one sat down with Dr. Umar. They took the word of a 20-year-old based off the history of two adults. That was a violation of journalism within itself. Now, then it creates a weaponization, as you can see here. It's the weaponization against a Black father. So this creation of this smear then cite the media coverage as proof. See, it's on social media. It must be proof. It's being all over the place. So it must be proof that it's happening. So this false complaint, it becomes true because people are seeing it. So they deem it as being true. And they use it to discredit, attack, or politically weaken their target. This has been going on for years. Now, the public perception is, once the lie is embedded into the public discourse, it becomes the truth, no matter what the facts are. Let's look how Nancy states about this.
Wrap-up smear. You smear somebody with falsehoods and all the rest, and then you merchandise it. And then you write it, and they'll say, see, it's reported in the press that this, and this. So they have that validation that the press reported the smear, and then it's called the wrap-up smear. Now I'm going to merchandise the press's report on the smear that we made. And it's a tactic. And it's self-evident. But I think I'm worth the trouble, quite frankly.
She said it's worth the trouble. It's self-evident. So this is not just political. This goes on through political movements. It goes on in banking. If you look at our episodes, episode 1 and 2 of Black and Curse, This is what we've been talking about, and this is why we wanted to go live to show it's happening also in another movement. This is not new. As you can see, they utilize this tactic to discredit and slow down the movement of liberation. Yeah, and let's get into that. Let's look at the Wrap-Up Smear book by the numbers. Let's look at this by the numbers, and what does that look like? Let's look at this playbook by the numbers. As you can see, 66% of negative media coverage on Black leaders is focused on personal scandals rather than policy or activism, compared to 34% for white leaders. Also, a study by Howard University found that Black male public figures are twice as likely to be falsely accused of personal misconduct rather than white counterparts. Okay. Now, it also say 85% of smear campaigns that target Black activists use family-related or financial allegations as the primary tool to erode their credibility. That's amazing right there. Now, in 2021, an analyst of social media algorithm. We all know what those algorithm is. This is why Just Another Messenger does not monetize, because there's a control of the algorithm. We're looking to have a very organic movement of people who are really understanding the liberation at hand. So in 2021, an analyst of social media algorithm, it was found that negative stories about Black public figures spread 3 times faster than positive ones. This means smear campaigns aren't just strategic, they're amplified by the very platforms that profit out of outrage. Yeah. This now we must ask ourselves, why is this pattern so consistent? Why is this pattern so consistent? Why Dr. Umar and why now? Why Dr. Umar and why now? Now, every time a Black leader gains too much influence, suddenly their character is under attack. Let's look at Malcolm X, how they deemed him the radical extremist label. The media distortion and government monitoring. Malcolm X rhetoric was repeatedly taken out of context to paint him as an advocate for race war rather than self-defense. Then they created media amplification. News outlets focused on his critiques of white supremacists while ignoring his call for unity among oppressed people worldwide. Now, this created a weaponization where the U.S. government and FBI monitored Malcolm X under COINTELPRO, justifying surveillance under the claim that he was a dangerous extremist. And the Black nationalist movement were divided because people that looked like Malcolm X they were easily used to get in on the demise and the assassination of Malcolm X. All right. And they deemed him as a militant, while others saw him as too compromising after his pilgrim to Mecca. But this is the message of which Malcolm X was attempting to spread to the people.
Who taught you, please, who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other. No, before you come asking Mr. Muhammad, does he teach hate, you should ask yourself, who taught you to hate being what God gave you?
Who taught you this? Who taught us this? Who taught us to hate ourselves? Let's look at the Black Liberation Movement regarding the Black Panther Party. This happened in 1960, 1970. The tactics was used, they fabricated criminal allegations, media manipulation, and division tactics, which is the smear campaign, the FBI's COINTEL Pro, which is a counterintelligence program, labeled the Black Panther parties as a Black extremist and terrorist group. Now, the FBI worked with news outlets to spread stories about the Black Panther parties being violent, anti-police, and a threat to national security. Now, the government cited these false media narratives to justify FBI raids, surveillance, arrests, and assassination of Black leaders like Fred Hampton. Now, look at this. Dr. Umar has been hit with a deadbeat dad narrative. Something 67% of high-profile Black men accused of misconduct have faced in smear campaigns over the past decade. Now, is this coincidence? We have to ask ourselves, is this coincidence? Now, let's look at the role of these lies being spread. Let's talk about the media machine that spread these narratives. Let's look at this. In 2022, it's a study from the USC. Allenberg found that Black male figures are 60% more likely to have their personal lives scrutinized in media coverage compared to their white counterparts. Now, also a Columbia Journalism Review analysts found that Black men are overrepresented in negative news stories and are underrepresented in positive ones by nearly 5-1. And let's not forget the algorithm basis we just talked about with Facebook, X, YouTube, and TikTok. They AI prioritize controversy. I mean, controversy, twerking is at the height of everything we see. Twerking, BBL, meaning that these negative posts about Black public figures, Black people are far more likely to go viral, paying the people to continue to delude them to substandard view or image than neutral or positive ones. Let's be real. This isn't about accountability. This is definitely about mind control. Let's look at this blueprint. Let's look at this blueprint of how do we fight this. This has gotten so far out of hand that it is ridiculous. I mean, it is a stain. This stain is becoming, Tide, game, you name it. It's gone too far, and in our people that looks like us is causing our continuous demise. How do we fight this smear campaign that continue just weave its way through the fabrics of our hearts, our community, our continuation of trauma? How do we fight this for healing, for liberation? Let's look at this. We must stop reacting emotionally to every headline before sharing or believing a scandal, and ask who benefits from this narrative. Not only who benefits from this narrative, who will be hurt economically and community-wide. Who is being hurt by this? We have to demand evidence. If this allegation lacks concrete proof, don't take these social sites as face value. We must start being vigilant and calling this stuff out. Call out the biased media. If these major outlets only cover negative Black stories, even our own, challenge them. Remove yourself from these platforms. And then we must support the independent media. We must only support the independent media ones that uplift us. We must only support that. Support media that uplifts and inform, such as Just Another Messenger. And there's other messengers out there. There's other platform out there that uplifts us to the point of mental, to get us out of this mental castration that has taken place. And we must keep our eye on the bigger picture. Every time a distraction campaign surfaces, we must ask, what was this leader doing that made them a target? We must ask that. And I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna show you what he was doing that made Dr. Umar a target. Let's look at what made him a target.
Question, Dr. Umar. Are you totally against interracial relationships?
I am totally against it, and I want to make sure you understand why. It's not because... Cut it out, Envy. Cut it out, Envy.
Don't do that, Envy. I'm going to be having a serious conversation.
We have a name for it. We have a name for it.
Okay.
The Snow Bunny Crisis.
Okay.
I am against the Snow Bunny Crisis. And I want your white listeners to understand. Because people be trying to say stuff like, he's the Black Hitler. I'm not the Black Hitler. I am in no way interested in hurting or harming the life of any human, white, Asian, Chinese. I believe in respecting everybody. The reason I'm against interracial marriage, Envy and Charlemagne, is because marriage is an economic contract. It's an economic contract. Most women do not marry down in status. They marry up. And if you don't believe me, show me a rich white woman married to a broke-ass black man. Have you ever seen a rich white woman marry a broke-ass black man? No, you have not, and you never will. Because marriage ain't about love, it's not colorblind, and it is totally economic. So if marriage is an economic unification and a contract, how can we, who don't have enough already, give so much to the white woman and to white people who have already taken too much when we got all these black women out here who will never get married? Only 1 out of every 4 black women in America will ever taste marriage. And half of them who taste marriage will be divorced within 5 years. If you want to save the black family, you have to protect it. And nothing could be further from the truth. Slavery didn't destroy the black family. Do you know that we were still getting married through slavery? Jumping the broom in secret, even under punishment of death. We were married during Reconstruction. We were married during civil rights. When do you begin to see the rise of the single-parented black female household? 1970. After they killed Dr. King, the United States government said we must neutralize the black power base. And they determined that the black power base was the black family. It was independent black skilled men and women who financed King, financed Mr. Garvey, financed Mr. Muhammad, financed SNCC and CORE, the Freedom Riders in the sit-in movement. So they said, if we want to crush the black struggle, we got to crush the black family. So guess what they did in 1970? King dies in 68. In 1970, they came into the black communities and de-industrialized our city centers. In 1970, they started shutting down the factories. Remember, up until the 50s and 60s, you didn't need a college degree to get a decent job. Many of us got grandparents who worked in factories their whole life and lived better lives than we're living now with 2 and 3 degrees. They could work in their same neighborhood, and everybody worked for the factory. Good retirement, pension, benefits, medical. They started shutting down the factories in 1970, and then they went into the high schools and did what? Started deindustrializing the inner city high schools. Up until 1970, you could graduate from almost any school in New York certified as a plumber, certified as an electrician, certified as a carpenter, auto body, brick mason, a welder. They took all those programs out. These are the skills that pays the bills, gentlemen. As long as you have a skill, you can always feed your family. But if all you got is college degrees, you might end up in the unemployment line. Why? Because
this is what he was doing, people. This is what Dr. Umar and Johnson was doing. This is what made him a target. The bigger picture, the bigger agenda. The system does not fear individuals. It fears movements. This is why every time a strong, unapologetic black leader starts to shake things up, they suddenly become problematic. This isn't about Dr. Umar being perfect or imperfect. This is about the old age strategy of silencing black men and women when challenging the system. So the real question, my people, the real question is, will you fall for the distraction, or will you see the bigger game being played? That's what we must ask ourselves as we continue to stroll through these social streets and keep getting involved with nonsense that will continue to delude to our suffering. Will we fall for the distractions, or will we see the bigger game being played? Just Another Message is not going to keep you long tonight. Until next time, stay woke, stay informed, and stay ready. Also, stay on the lookout for my book being launched on April the 22nd, called Sacred Selfishness: The Art of Loving Without Losing Yourself. Are you ready to reclaim your power in love? What if you never had the chance to love again? What if you could give love without exhausting yourself? What if putting yourself first actually made your relationship stronger? This book will teach you how to love from abundance, not scarcity, how to prioritize without guilt, how to love deeply while standing fully in your own power. This is about choosing yourself. And please continue to tune in every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. No, we are not monetizing on YouTube or any other platform. So please support our channel via Cash App at $ Just Another Messenger. And if you know someone or you would like to be a part of the message that moves us forward, to move the needle forward, please send an email to justanothermessengerpodcast@gmail.com. I salute you, our brother, Dr. Umar Johnson. Keep up the good work. Continue to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And yes, Black and Curse will be on Wednesday, part 3, Wednesday. Tune in. Thank you for tuning in this evening, and have a wonderful evening.